We're in a game of progress here. We recognize that we are broken crayons. It's always shame that is demanding immediate, idealized perfection, and that is the kiss of death.
So according to Psychology Today, manifesting is the idea that through the power of belief, we can effectively think a goal into becoming reality.
Ian Cron is a best-selling author, speaker, and renowned Enneagram expert. But behind his success is a moving story of addiction, recovery, and transformation. Ian is proof that any obstacle can become the catalyst for building a life of purpose and passion.
The purpose of the 12 steps is not to get you to stop drinking, watching porn, overeating, or whatever 12-step thing you're doing them for. Those were the symptoms of the problem. They're not the problem. 100 years from now, people will say that America's greatest contribution to spirituality was
The statement that you made that I cannot get out of my head, and it might haunt me tonight. I want to start with a pretty interesting piece of data that is troubling, and yet I think that there's so much hope and opportunity. Across the board, experts are estimating that over 40% of Americans are struggling with some form of addiction or compulsive behavior at some point in their lives. So that's a pretty wide piece of data there, and there's some guesses, but that is still a pretty stark piece of data. And I want to share something that you have shared very openly. I was living a life, this is you saying, I was living a life of complete and utter chaos. I was an addict who was unable to stop. The wreckage of my life was so obvious to everyone around me that I couldn't hide it anymore. It was either face it or die. With the landscape that we just kind of described and your personal experience, I wanted you to take us into your story of how that addiction came about, maybe some of the causation of that, and then that moment that you describe in that quote, it was either face it or die. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I first got sober in 1987, and from alcohol, from alcoholism, and I was a young man, and I grew up in a home with an alcoholic father. My father died from alcoholism at 63 years old. I have siblings in recovery. Like, I always laugh. I tell people that alcoholism doesn't run in my family. It gallops through my family. Like it's like unbelievable, right? So, addictions are complicated. They're partly genetic, I think, biological. They're familial. But we just know this for sure, that they're always destructive. And one of the things I've been working toward these days is having people understand that addiction, we tend to think of people like, okay, well, there are those people, alcoholics and addicts, right? And then there's the rest of the population,
right?
As if there's some, right? But in reality, everybody is somewhere on the addiction continuum. It is built into the human condition. And you can be addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, food, people pleasing. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
How about our phones?
Oh, well, don't even get me started on that, right? Like the technology addictions, gaming addictions, gambling addictions, sport betting addictions. I mean, as a friend of mine likes to say, if you're not an addict now, you're one click away. You're just one click away.
To that end, is there an actual spectrum that
Yes.
you would describe for us?
Yeah.
I think that'd be good for us all to kind of have a wake-up call.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
One spectrum we might think about is from mild to severe, mild, moderate, and severe.
Okay.
Right? It is a unhealthy, compulsive relationship with a person, a behavior, or a substance that has mood-altering effects and negative consequences. Okay? Now, that can be then ranging from mild to moderate to severe, right? Like if you have a mild eating addiction, right? It's not interrupting your job. It's not messing up your relationships, but it's problematic, right? On the other hand, if you have a methamphetamine addiction, right? It's going to burn your house down a lot faster, probably than some others. But your chain could be a thread or a chain. It doesn't matter. You're still tethered, right? Like you're still in bondage.
Yeah.
So and stuck.
Yeah.
So my goal in life right now, this is a passion project. It's my little step away from the Enneagram because my life has been so transformed by a solution that I found for addictions that I want to share with everyone and make it available to everyone.
Yeah. No, it's really fascinating to see how you have come from a lineage and an environment of addiction. And I think we want to know, in 1987, you said that's when you became sober. What was the lead up to that moment? Was it a bombshell moment where you said, I'm at the bottom, I bounced so hard, now I got to do it? Was it a progressive thing? What did it look like for you to finally say, I'm breaking this pattern?
Well, I was probably, it's very hard to know when I sort of jumped the wall into alcoholism. It's not like one day you wake up and you go, well, that was it just then, It's
right.
like the addictions come up on you like the tide.
Right.
They just slowly and imperceptibly come in, and then one day you wake up and you realize, oh, I'm over my head and I'm drowning. People have a hard time seeing it when it's coming, right? Until it's there.
Yep.
And so in 1987, I had reached a point where, now I'm hiding alcohol around the house, like in bookshelves and under beds, and I'm, drinking earlier and earlier in the day. I'm a newly married guy. My dad had just died of alcoholism.
Wow.
Another member of my family confronted me, and said, like, you're heading in the same direction. Like, what are you doing, And that's when I went to my first 12-step meeting. I went to a therapist, and this therapist, God bless him. I mean, I was a young guy, and he said, in God's providence, this guy is like in a 12-step program himself, and he spotted it. Like, he was like, oh, this is a no-brainer, right? And he's like, I won't see you unless you start going to 12-step meetings. And I'm like, Anne Lamott has this great quote. She says, trying to reason with an alcoholic or an addict is like trying to blow out a light bulb, right? So I'm like, I just slammed the door and I walked out. I'm like, I am not an alcoholic, and I walked out. 2 weeks later, New Year's Eve, 1986, Annie and I went to a party in New York City that we now refer to as the Night of the Living Dead. I will not go into all the details of what went sideways that night.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it did not end well. I did not end as a popular new husband. And went back to see him, and that was the beginning of my journey in that world.
Yeah, well, I mean, that leads us to, we were talking about this earlier. I love the subtitle. The new book is The Fix, How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between.
Yeah.
And I was talking to you as an author about how I loved how long the subtitle is, because every author wants a long subtitle to tell people what they've poured their guts into. But this is a fascinating way of describing that. And you said it's now a pet project. Why is the 12-step process, you think, so valuable for all of us? Because you just put a hula hoop around everybody in that subtitle.
Yeah. So let's just think about this for a second. 90 years ago, a guy named Bill Wilson, Bill W., founded a 12-step program around the 12 steps, which actually derived from a Christian organization called the Oxford Group in New York City, right? And they initially had 6 steps. He broadened it out to 12. And what he discovered is that when alcoholics, who back then were hopeless, I mean, you were just going to die, right? There was little hope in the medical community at that point, no solution to this problem, right? He discovered that if they would have a spiritual awakening of sufficient force, right, that they could be, that the craving for alcohol would be expelled and their lives could be saved, right? 90 years later, tens and tens of millions of people's lives have been radically changed and transformed as a result of working those steps. It is extraordinary. And I will guarantee you in 100 years from now, people will say that America's greatest contribution to spirituality in its first 200 years was the 12 steps.
Interesting.
Now, I mean, it's literally tens of millions of people's lives have been saved. Now, what I wanted to do was democratize them and make them available to even the soccer mom sitting at the kitchen table who is very moderate, has some patterns of self-destructive behavior that she wants to get over, or the dad wants to get over, right? And become a better expression of themselves. I'm like, you should work the 12 steps. They will change your life.
Yeah. Is the power in the steps, is it the specificity of the call to action in the 12 steps?
Yes.
Or is it also the fact that it's 12 and they seem to build on each other?
Yes.
Is it both and?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both and, right? Like, so here's how you can break the steps down. The first 3 steps, the call to action is, let's make peace in your relationship with God. Those are the first 3 steps.
That's
right? And part and parcel of that is admitting your powerlessness over a particularly destructive behavior, right? Or, in your life. Admitting that you have been unable to come up with a solution to this problem on your own, and then turning your will and your life over to the care of God. Those are the first 3 steps. 4 through 7 is, let's fix our relationship with ourselves. That involves self-reflection, doing some inventories, taking a look inside, self-examination, the whole process, right? 8 and 9 is, now let's heal your relationships with others. And then 10 through 12 is, how do I cultivate a lifestyle? There are directions on how to cultivate a lifestyle that will support health and growth in those 3 domains of your life moving forward. It's so simple, you're going to try and make it hard.
Yeah.
Right? Make peace with God, make peace with yourself, make peace with others, and cultivate a life that protects all 3 of those domains moving forward and drawing from the wisdom of all 12 steps throughout the course of the day.
I've had the opportunity, a great privilege of my life, to be able to coach people, but most of the time it's in a format on a live show, and it's 8 to 10 minutes at most. Sometimes I'll do it at live events where I have about the same amount of time. And I know in your role as a therapist, you've experienced this far more than I, but I find that the people that have the hardest time moving on from failure and pain are the ones that can't do the middle steps. And that is I think they can accept forgiveness from God. And I think in some ways they can accept forgiveness for others. But I'm thinking of some people that I've tried to help in my personal life who just couldn't quite get back out of that cave of shame is what I would call it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they can't forgive themselves. They can't get right with themselves. That's my experience. Your thoughts on that?
Well, you need somebody to accompany you on the journey, right? Just the other day I was in a 12-step meeting, right? I go to about 4 12-step meetings a week. I love these things. It's better than, dare I say this, right? But it's kind of better than church sometimes.
Right.
Because
it's certainly more honest than church.
Well, I've been a pastor, right?
Yeah.
So I know what I'm speaking about. Like I'm always telling people, like, do you have any idea of what's going on in your basement at night? Like, do you have any idea that of the grace and the forgiveness and the transformation and the miracles that are happening in those meetings that meet in your church basement every night?
Yeah.
Right? Like if the people upstairs could just taste what's going on downstairs and do the work that's going on down there, that they could have the same incredible freedom, joy, and peace that people downstairs are discovering, right? What you're talking about in shame, right? So at this meeting the other day, a guy said something, and you hear the most amazing wisdom in these meetings. This guy goes, shame should have already mastered everything.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That guy just really described shame pretty well.
That's really
should
good.
have already mastered everything. Okay. So one of the beauties of the 12 steps is, the goal of them is, as stated, is progress, not perfection. We're in a game of progress here. We recognize that we are broken crayons, right? And we are in a progress game. We're not shooting for perfection. It's always shame that is demanding immediate, idealized perfection, right? And that is the kiss of death. And all of us, addicts and non-addicts alike, suffer from shame. It's a part of the human condition, right?
Yeah, really.
And in many ways, our self-destructive behaviors are being fueled by that shame, being underwritten by that shame.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about what an addict will do. I'll use an alcoholic as an example, right? I feel pain. I drink and feel relief from the pain for some period of time, right? Then the solution starts to cause me more pain than it solves, right? I do dumb things. I do drunk things when I'm drunk, right? And then I feel shame, which then takes me back to
the bottle.
So now we're into this loop, right? And that can be with food. It can be with, there's a list of addictions in the book. Like I can As a therapist, I've seen so many addictions.
Right.
It is crazy. Right. I mean, one of the most powerful addictions there is codependency, people's addiction to other people.
Yeah.
Like they just cannot get out of a relationship that is so dysfunctional and so destructive, and yet they keep going back and back. And they go, I don't know why I keep going back to this person. You know what I mean? Like there are people in this circle nodding at me right now. Like unless you've been, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Right?
Well, I sit there and I think when you say that, it feels like when you talked about that mild, medium or severe,
yes.
However you define that, we all have the addiction of codependency on some level.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we could say everybody.
So there's a great psychiatrist. He was a Christian guy. His name was Gerald May. He wrote a book years ago called Addiction and Grace. He's got a great quote in it. He says, to be human is to be addicted. And to be human and addicted is to stand in need of grace.
Wow.
Now, that means all of us in this space carry within us these addictive patterns that are ways of making life more tolerable apart from a relationship with a higher power, according to the steps. I choose to call that higher power God.
Right.
And, we're looking for a workaround. How can I solve the problem of my pain?
Yeah.
Maybe mild pain, maybe great pain, through some behavior, substance, or thing to make my life work because I'm suffering.
That's right.
Like addictions make sense.
Yeah, 100%. I've never asked you this question. I'm really quite excited to ask you and almost posit something here, an opinion. Full transparency. I'm in therapy right now. It's been great. The longest I've ever been in.
Nice.
Weekly, like just doing some great digging. Didn't go in crisis, but did go in to go, hey, I'm hurting. And so it's been really great.
Good.
And so it's the longest period I've ever been in it. So I think that context matters to what I'm going to say / ask. I'm getting help. It's great. It's been really good. Got some tools, seeing some real change in multiple areas. But I've got this thing where I'm going, what's the balance between going to my therapist, getting some help there, but also those first 3 steps of the 12 steps, and you said it, getting right with God. And what is the right, healthy mix? Because I was saying to my friend, I think at some point, and this may be naive, and I'm okay if you call me out on it.
Okay.
At some point, it feels like to me, I need to be seeing the therapist less because I'm actually listening, I'm using the tools, but I'm also getting to a place where I can heal spiritually. Because I think sometimes we've got so much junk going on in here and up here that we can't even get clear with God. It's not a statement, it's kind of a statement and a question.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
It's a both
What's the
and.
mix?
It's a both and.
I agree it's both
mix.
and, but what do you think if we're getting healthy and we're getting there, shouldn't we be leaning more on the higher power, God, and less time in therapy? I'm just curious.
Well, I guess the way that I would understand it is to see that therapy is taking place under the rubric of my journey with God. And this is a person that God has placed in my life to help me discern what is going on inside of me that is preventing me from realizing the kind of health and wholeness that God would want for me, right?
Yeah.
So I look at psychology with very clear eyes, what it's capable of doing and not doing. It's not the miracle cure-all. But one thing for sure is we need someone in our lives. As a friend of mine, my sponsor likes to say in my 12-step program, he likes to say, Ian, not everybody needs to know everything about you, but somebody does.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And so we all need somebody who knows everything in our lives. That could be a spiritual director. It could be a pastor, right? And it ought to be somebody who's outside the system. That's why coaches are so great, right?
Yeah.
Like I have coaching clients in the corporate world, right? And one of the things that makes me so valuable to them is I have no vested interest in what happens to their company. I don't have an investment in it. I don't have, I can step outside of the system and observe it and go, oh, you're just being a jerk. And I don't have to worry about being, it's not my job. And, maybe our coaching relationship could end.
Right.
But my job is to speak as a distanced observer of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in therapy within the context, though, of understanding that, this is part of my development as a person of faith.
Yeah.
Right.
If it were possible, and I know it's not, but I'm trying to get to the importance of what you think therapy plays in our getting healthy here. If it were possible, would you recommend that if everybody could afford it, would you say everybody needs to do it?
I think there are certain transitions in life when I think having a therapist is helpful. And here's what a good therapist does, right? In addition to moving us toward wholeness, and this is one thing that a therapist does, right? Which is they'll save you time.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you're swimming around in your own stuff and you're just, going in circles, right? Because you are the biggest mystery you have to face every day.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
And so they're coming in to help interrupt the circuit on these loops that aren't working. Yes, I think that there are transitions in life, from single to married, from moving to an empty nest, retirement. I could give you lots of different transitions. When I think having somebody with you, coach, therapist, therapeutically informed coaching, which is kind of what I do, I think is super helpful.
Ian, I'm glad you said that. It's been so important to me. Folks, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I believe each of us is designed to play a unique role in life, but sometimes mental and emotional struggles can keep us from being the best version of ourselves. More people than ever are acknowledging that mental health directly impacts how we perform in our work and in our lives. But over a quarter of those people still say they avoid getting therapy due to the fear of being judged. Folks, listen, the world is better when you're healthy and happy. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, contact BetterHelp. BetterHelp is 100% online, so it's convenient for your schedule and it's affordable. They have a network of more than 30,000 licensed therapists with a wide range of specialties. And they've got over 10 years of experience matching people with just the right therapist for them. To get started, fill out a short online survey and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. Remember, addressing mental health is not just important, it's essential for winning at work and in life. We're all better with help. So visit betterhelp.com/Ken to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ken. So we have a professional audience. These are people that are about professional development. They want to get better as a person. They want to grow and get opportunities. We all kind of desire progress. Some of these people will move into a leadership role. We know this just by osmosis in the American work system.
Right.
You work with a lot of big time companies. You've got a great perspective on this. One of the things that I see, and I'm wondering, is there's a massive amount of professional pressure for anybody who wants to win as a professional.
Yeah.
So I don't care if you're in the trades. I don't care if you're white collar, whatever. Mm. Because these people want to grow and advance, there is a natural performance pressure that comes with that.
Yep.
Sometimes it's about a paycheck because you got too much life and not enough check at the end of the month. There's the competition piece, trying to win and you get up the ladder. That's real. How much does professional pressure, and I'm using that term loosely, play into the slippery slope to addiction?
Well, it's a great question. It's a complicated answer, but I'll give you a fast one, right? So let's go back to my definition of an addiction. It is an unhealthy, compulsive relationship with a person, substance, or behavior that has mood-altering effects and negative consequences. So let's just talk about workaholism. How many people do I know or have sat in my office and said, for the last 30 years, I have worked 80-hour work weeks at an investment bank in Manhattan. I am now X years old. I've had a heart attack. My kids don't know who I am. My wife ran away with my personal trainer. You know what I mean? Because I was always on the road working. I have been obsessed with this job and it has ruined my life and I don't know how to stop. Or I just retired and my identity doesn't exist anymore and I don't, right? It's an addiction. It supported their self-esteem. It had mood-altering effects. It made them feel like king of the world or queen of the world, right? And it had negative consequences. So addiction is so subtle. There's so many ways it can play out. Let's just face it, like marketing is largely a game of trying to get people to be addicted, right, to solutions, right? Because ultimately, an addiction is an external solution to an internal problem. And so the external solution could be, whatever your thing is, right, to an internal problem. But the reality is, and we know this, spiritually, like happiness is an inside job. Peace is an inside job. Wholeness is work that has to be done from the inside out. You can't engage in a person, a substance, or a behavior, right, is not going to solve that internal problem. In fact, what ends up happening is the external solution becomes a bigger problem than the problem it sought to solve.
Yeah.
It's
really deep.
It is quite deep. It's a deeply spiritual issue. It's not just psychological and physiological, though it's that, right? It's a profoundly spiritual issue. And
okay, let's go into that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's because I agree with you, but I want you to describe that. What is that profound spiritual problem that's at the root?
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going, and I know this has got a lot of layers.
There's so many legs, there's so many layers to this, but I love this conversation, right? So the spiritual problem, and by the way, it's interesting, and people don't realize this, like here's the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That is the purpose of the 12 steps. The purpose of the 12 steps is not to get you to stop drinking, watching porn, overeating, or whatever 12-step thing you're doing what you're doing them for, right? Those were the symptoms of the problem. They're not the problem.
That's right.
Alcohol is not the alcoholic's problem. It's their solution to their problem, right? People tend to think, the alcohol is the problem. Nope, it was the solution to the problem. The problem is the hole in the soul.
Yes.
The problem is just how hard it is to be human. Anxiety, depression, worry, right? Like, can we just all agree? Like, sometimes this is why it drives me crazy about. I'm coming out of the box now, right?
Good.
Like, so much of the faith-based world wants to put a pretty little ribbon on everything that's going on. But can we just face that life is hard and admit it out loud?
Yeah.
Like, life is difficult.
That's correct.
Right? And we try to find solutions to make it less difficult, right? And the problem is, in the end, those solutions make life more difficult than it was before we tried using the solution.
Yeah.
Right? The only way out of this is a relationship with a power greater than yourself, a spiritual awakening of sufficient force, that it moves your self-centered ego out of the way with all of its crazy ideas of how I can make life work, right? To move from an egocentric life to a God-centric life.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, what were you looking for in those addictions all along? Whether you know it or not, you were looking for God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the solution for the addict it has to be principally spiritual.
I saw something the other day, and it was a psychologist, I forget his name, and he was talking with Mel Robbins, and he basically was saying, when somebody he said, everybody wants to do right. Everybody wants to do well or do good, paraphrasing. And when someone isn't doing right or doing good, it's not because they want to do bad.
Yeah.
He was saying they don't have the ability in the moment. And boy, it hit me, certainly as a parent, I looked at it immediately through that lens, but then I immediately personalized it.
Yeah.
And I was like, the times when I've messed up, what was it about me, or what did I not have in that moment that I couldn't do right? And I will tell you that's a big adjustment for me, because I've learned this in therapy, by the way, that I tend to default towards so much personal responsibility that it's just such unrealistic. And so when I heard that psychologist say that, I did personalize. I was okay. It's not absolving me from responsibility for my actions, but boy, it surely changed the way I'm looking at me. I'm looking at my kids' interactions with me and others, my wife and I, if we get into it or something. That's a fascinating deal. Do you agree with what he's saying in essence, that you're incapable in the moment, something's messed up here and here?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. I think people have, particularly, let's say, even like in the faith-based world where I spent a lot of my life, right? Like they just they have no plan for transformation. They don't have a plan. They're just like winging it, doing the best they can, and they also are acutely unaware of how little power they have to change themselves. Like, all right, let me just wager a bet here, right? You have some behavior in your life that has dogged you your entire life that you would probably empty your bank account to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm assuming that's true for everybody in here. Am I right? Right? Okay. And we've tried everything we know how on our own unaided willpower to solve the problem.
Correct.
Right? And we can't do it. We just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. What's the answer? Well, what's interesting, and for me as a person of faith, right? Like, the answer is right in front of us. It's just literally right in front of us. You have to reach a point in your life where you look into the eyes of God, right? And say, I'm out of ammo. Like, I'm out of ammo. I literally do not, everything in me would like to stop doing this, but I can't. That is the moment when everything begins. When everyone thinks that, we call that hitting bottom.
Yeah.
That's when Paul says, I do not understand why I keep doing the things I don't want to do and I don't do the things I want to do. It's like, that is a moment where a guy is like he is standing at the precipice of transformation.
Yeah.
So the message of the steps is, guess what? I remember years ago, my sponsor, and for those of you who don't know, a sponsor is someone in a 12-step program who adopts a newcomer. And like, you just sort of hold their hand for the first year and they walk you through the steps, and they give you advice and counsel, right? He said to me one time, he said to me, he says, Ian, we are well past any conversation about you fixing you.
It's so rewarding, isn't it? It's a great statement.
But because I had reached a point in my life where it's like, I've tried everything. I have tried everything I know how, right? Yeah. And that's the moment. That is the moment when God can go, oh, good, now we can begin. You have to realize you have run out of good ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have exhausted all your good ideas, sometimes several times over. And that is the moment when grace has an opportunity to work. So let me just sort of delineate two ideas to you that are super important. I'll do it fast. How do people change? Well, most people of faith, and they do it with the best of intentions. It's just wrong, but it's with the best of intentions. They try reformation, which is I'm just going to try and fix myself.
Right.
I'm going to make myself a more loving, kind, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, good person, right? Self-controlled. Right. I'm just going to work really hard to make myself a better person.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Yeah, pretty frustrating.
Yeah, you can move the furniture around a little bit and give yourself, and then by the way, your ego pats you on the back and goes, look what a good job I'm doing, right? That's a problem right there. I won't even go into it, right? But the fact of the matter is that's reformation. That's called taping fruit to trees.
Right.
Right? Yeah. You're just on your own unaided willpower trying to be a more respectable person. That is not what we want, which is what my faith tells me I can have, which is called transformation. Now, what is transformation? It's not reformation. Years ago, my son, I'm going to tell a story that may not be entirely appreciated, but it's in the book, right? When my son was about 1.5 years old, he was taking a bath. I'm giving him the bath. I realize I ain't got no towel. So I run to the linen closet to grab a towel. And in the minute that I am gone,
I can only imagine where this goes. I feel like this may have happened to me, some version of this.
Yes. I come back, and he has taken an epic poo in the tub. Okay? Now, in that time, right, of my being absent, he has realized that he has caused a natural disaster. The harp seals are dying. This is the Exxon Valdez.
The heart seals.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this was
Yes.
a bad episode in the tub.
That
right?
means we're throwing away all of the tub toys
Yes,
for non-parents.
absolutely. So he
Yeah.
realizes he has caused a mess, and he has now been playing with the buoys
Okay.
in the tub, and now realizes, oh, it's on my hand. So now he's like wiped it on his chest and his hair and on the white tiled walls. I come back in, man. It's a crime scene.
Oh,
like, get the
no
tape.
question.
We're gonna tape it out. You know,
Yes.
right? And
You're instantly in crisis mode. At
yeah.
that
I'm
point.
standing there, and he's a mess. But he's been trying to fix himself. He's been trying to clean himself up
That's good.
before I get back. But he's made more a mess of himself by trying to fix himself. What he needed was a higher power, God, someone outside of him to do for him what he could not do for himself,
Yeah.
namely change.
Yeah.
That's transformation. When we reach a place in our lives where we go, I'm out of ammo. Everything I've tried to make this better has made it worse. Well-intentioned or not, right? Like, but it's just made it worse. That's the moment when grace can come in. And then when you work the steps, what happens is that you begin to address areas of your life where that have been the source of the problem, right?
Yeah.
And what happens then is that God is the author of the transformation. It's not an ego-driven reformation anymore. Am I making sense?
Yeah, total sense.
And so when people say to me all the time, they're like, well, are the 12 steps like in the Bible? It's like, it is just basically the Bible in 12 sentences. It's like, get right with God, get right with yourself, get right with other people, and keep doing it. That is basically the 12 steps, right? But you got to be ready for them.
Yeah. The statement that you made that I cannot get out of my head, and it might haunt me tonight.
Good, I love that.
Yeah. No, this is really great. You said something to the effect of, we all walk around and we're just unaware that we can transform. I'm paraphrasing. It was the start of that. And that, to me, is a massive issue. The question becomes, is it a lack of self-worth? Is it a combination of things where we're not even walking around thinking we got a shot to get better or to truly transform? It's not about the get better part, because that leads to the reformation piece.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to ask one follow-up on that. What do you think is behind that?
Well, I think most of it is because we put the onus of responsibility on ourselves to change us, right? And
That's it.
Right.
I think that's it. I'm resonating with that, because then you're exhausted because it's not working.
It's not working.
And so then you just become a bit of a zombie.
Right, or it's not lasting.
It's not lasting.
And also, you don't have a plan for kind of staying in the zone of transformation, right? Like, and again, 12 steps offer us that. Like, I oftentimes tell people the steps are like a trellis, you know, for people who do gardening, right? You have a trellis on the side of the house on which it's a support structure on which things grow in a healthy way. Right? So the steps are just a trellis they on which spiritual growth can happen. And then what you realize is that, like, I can't tell you, like, I can give you example after example of this in my own life where, I have turned over parts of my life to God, and I have seen transformation take place in my life without my hardly having to lift a finger. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
absolutely.
Now, I'm not saying I don't suit up and show up for life, right? But I, on a regular basis, have to say to God, God, this whole, like, I'll give you an example of my own life, right? Like, I'm a pretty insecure person. You would think by now at this point in my life, I'm not. But I can just tell all of you in this room who are younger than I am that you are going to get to my age, and some of the problems you have right now, you will still have at my age. And you will think to yourself, how am I still doing this? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you will. In 20 years from now, you will have issues in your life from 7th grade. Insecurities from 7th grade. You will have them at my age. And you will say, what am I still doing here, right? Now, you will regard them differently. And you will gaze at them with more compassionate eyes, I hope, as I do. There have been times in my life when my insecurities have led me to look for the approval and the affirmation of others as a way to support my own self-esteem. You ever done that? Right?
Dude, you know me well enough to know the answer to that.
I know that was a rhetorical question, right?
I was going to say 47 times a day.
Yeah, like seriously, like there have been times in my life where I have thought to myself, I seem to walk around with a 3x5 card on my forehead that says, "Do you love me yet?" It's like a question I'm walking around with, and I'm like going fishing all the time, looking for you to tell me how awesome you think I am.
100%.
Because I have doubts.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm looking into your eyes, right? You know what's so amazing is I have been on this 12-step journey and in earnest in the last few years. That has been taken away from me. Now, does it periodically percolate up a little bit? Sure. But for the most part, I can tell you that behavior that I worked forever to try and get rid of, I never really could. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like whack-a-mole all day long. Okay, I got to stop that. I got to stop that. I got to stop name dropping to win this person's attention and do that. You know what I mean? Like, oh God, I hate myself. Look at me. Look what I'm doing. Just by working steps, working a program, being in community, I have suddenly found that the grip of that in my life has loosened, and God has done for me what I could not do for myself by taking that away.
Yeah. Wow. That's so encouraging. I know not just for me, but for a lot of people. We've kind of been dancing around this topic. I'm very excited to get into it. A recent report said that 33% of Americans report being lonely.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically disconnected from friends and family.
Yes.
You've seen this in the headlines. I think anybody watching and listening today, you've heard the phrase, the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
That's kind of now a catchphrase. I know there's a lot of opinions on this, not easily answered. Do you think that anything has changed? In other words, in 2025, is this worse now than it was in 1975? That's my first question.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you think are the causes, or is there a primary, if we go deep, if we go 4 layers deeper than this, and this, what do you think is the reason for that?
I think it's multi-pronged, and it's...
Give me the couple big ones.
Social media. I mean, I just feel like the COVID. I mean, there's so many things that have made the epidemic of loneliness blossom and mushroom out. And, what's interesting is the relationship between loneliness and addiction. Right?
Well, I thought there must be, right?
Oh, there is one. Trust me. Like, first of all, we know that just during COVID, like the numbers of people suffering from addictions of all kinds have just skyrocketed during COVID. Why? Isolation.
Yes.
So there's a guy named Johann Hari, and he has a premise. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So let me just say that again.
Yeah.
The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, or let's say abstinence from a behavior or a person, right? It's connection. It's what fuels oftentimes addictions is the feeling of conscious separation from God, yourself, and others, that I am alone, that I am so different from you that I will never truly be in community. So the magic of what happens in church and basements, right? When you see these 12-step meetings, Overeaters Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, whatever is meeting in the basement, right? A big part of the secret sauce is community. That's what is driving so much of the healing.
And then real deep connection.
Deep connection at a level that is hard to explain to other people because you are trying to get over something that's killing you together.
I'm wondering if loneliness, does it sneak up on us much like you said addiction does? It's not like just one day you realize that you're really lonely. And I also wonder maybe, how would you define loneliness? You did such a great job defining addiction.
Yeah.
When we hear loneliness, like what at its really dangerous, scary, isolated, dark place, what does it sneak up on us? And then how do we know that we're really lonely?
Can I ask you a question first?
Yes, of course.
How many of your coaching clients, and now I'm going to just zero in on this, in the corporate space, over the age of 40 are not lonely?
None of them.
None of them. I have yet to have a client whose principal symptom what they present to me with is fundamental loneliness.
Yeah.
And the higher up they have gotten, the lonelier they are.
Without question.
Right? Because the sacrifices relationally they've had to make to get there, but also the higher up on the ladder they go, right? The
There
more
are less,
isolated.
more like them.
Yes,
The power of the 12-step community that we've been talking about is everybody's in the room. There are people like me. As you get higher up the ladder, there tends to be less people. It's just a function of percentages.
Yeah. So when you come to a meeting with me, you will never know anybody's last name there.
Right.
But you will know 10 people's last names in the room because there are 10 famous people in the room.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, those 10 famous people are talking to people next to them who may be living in the back of their car.
Right.
So the whole hierarchy has been flattened. The social hierarchy has been flattened.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Everybody's drinking from the same new well, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So let me jump in because you're absolutely on this. So we got a lot of high performers watching and listening to this conversation. Mm-hmm. They're going, I'm lonely.
Yeah.
How do they find their people?
A person has to make a decision, like, am I going to die on the altar of my success? Am I going to give everything and lose my soul in the process to gain all that? Or am I going to make a turn here and try to find a community of people where I can be completely myself and where I can speak the truth of my condition to a group of trusted others, right? This is why you'll oftentimes hear people in 12-step meetings say something like this. My name is Ian and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. That's how they open what they're going to say. And everyone goes, hi, Ian. Joke, right? Okay. That actually does happen and it's not funny. It's actually kind of cool, And what's so amazing about saying, I remember when I first heard someone say that, I was like, grateful? Like when I first got in those rooms, I was like, grateful? What, are you crazy? Like what? Who's grateful about being in this cold basement drinking gray coffee? I mean, this is awful, right?
Right.
And it's like, then you realize, for me, because of the nature of my particular addictions, like it became obvious to a lot of other people and I got, thrown into treatment. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, I'm grateful that I actually had an addiction that became obvious to everybody and I had a place to go to get help. And I had other people don't have that. I have natural built-in community, right? Of being where I'm completely honest, where I can go and cry, I can go and talk, and where I can go and laugh. Like people are always amazed in 12-step groups, like how much laughter there is. Like they thought it was going to be a bunch of people sitting around not drinking and like whining about it. Uh-huh. It's like, that is not what people talk about in 12-step meetings. Like whatever you've seen on TV is a lie. I can just tell you right now. Yeah. You've never seen an accurate portrayal of a 12-step meeting online. On a TV show, never. But people do have to come to a place where they say, loneliness is no longer acceptable. It is literally corroding me from the inside out, and I must find a solution in some group. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, find a group of others, or someone who has convened a group of others for that purpose.
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking about what would I say to my own question? What would be my answer to what I asked you? And as I'm sitting there listening to you, but also reflecting, I think my advice to people is, if nothing else, there's an old phrase been around forever: birds of a feather flock together. And if nothing else, find a common interest.
Yeah.
If you're interested in this type of music or you're interested in this hobby, if nothing else, start there.
Yeah.
Just to make some connection.
Yes. So the other thing is, though, too, Ken, and I don't know, 3s on the Enneagram are tricky, right? Because so many of your relationships, and this is also part of your age, right? If we think about what Arthur Brooks says, right? There are real friends and there are deal friends.
Right.
For a lot of 3s, there's a ton of deal friends and not many real friends. A deal friend is someone who can help you on your own sort of professional, personal journey. And they're normal. They're not a bad thing. There's nothing on them. But you got to have some real friends, people who you love and know you intimately, and they don't have any vested interest in, knowing Ken Coleman, getting on the Ken Coleman show. You know what I mean? Or they're not there to make a deal. They're not playing golf and also looking to do something with you professionally. Right. You know what I mean, right?
Well, you told me about, you mentioned this to me one time in one of our conversations, probably was on your show, and I got real intentional to make sure that I was surrounding myself with more of those real friends.
Yes.
And as a result of it, I can tell you that, and I'm telling you this as a validation. I hope our audience gets something from this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have found rewarding over being intentional about that is having friends that they just don't care about any of this.
Right.
Meaning they will celebrate me
Yep.
as any normal friend would, but when we're together, we never talk about my work.
Yeah.
They largely could care less about the platform that is associated with my work.
So I got this friend of mine. We were out to dinner last night, right? And I will tell you who it is because you know who it is, and he will love that I tell this
Okay,
story.
this is even better.
Do you know Buddy Green?
Yes.
Okay, so-
Not really
All right,
well,
so
but I know
Buddy
who he
Green is a songwriter,
Yeah.
and he is a virtuoso harmonica player. Like, right, wrote the song "Mary, Did You Know?" I mean, he's like just an amazing guy, right?
Yeah.
He's a harmonica player.
Right.
Now, I love Buddy. We go out and talk regularly. Do you know what I said to Buddy one time a couple weeks ago? I said, you know what I love about our friendship is that you are useless to me.
Yeah. And I know what you mean by that. That's
Exactly. He's useless to me.
great. Yeah. He
Harmonica,
can't advance you at
like
all.
I'm an author and I'm a therapist, harmonica. I got nothing where we're going to make a deal here. You know what I mean? Like there's no, I just love Buddy because Buddy's heart is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And he's so smart
Yeah.
and so well-read. And we talk about things that have nothing to do with the harmonica or the Enneagram. I don't even think Buddy knows his Enneagram type. I've never asked him.
Right.
It's not anything to do with our
right.
life. Well, all that matters to me about Buddy is how do I help Buddy's soul become a more beautiful representation of God's presence in the world? And I think he thinks that way about me.
Yeah.
And last night the four of us had dinner, and I cried and my wife cried about some stuff going on in our lives. They listened, you know what I mean? And it had nothing to do, nowhere in the back of my mind was I thinking, gee, I wonder if Buddy could help me get a speaking gig at X place. Maybe
Right.
how do I subtly bring that into the conversation? Like,
Right.
that's a deal, friend.
Yeah, it is. And you know, the flip side of that, I think,
Yeah.
is you also aren't worried about pretenses.
No.
When you're hanging out with the real friend, you
Yes.
can cry and snot
Yeah.
and be insecure and do that kind of stuff.
At the Green Hills Grill even.
Yes, that's exactly right. As long as you have
Oh,
a nice
boy.
napkin, you know. But you don't do that when you're hanging around with deal friends because you're putting your best foot forward. I'd liken that to
Right.
Instagram.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's the flip side of that, and that to
Yes.
me is the cure to loneliness. You got to have some people who just love you and value you,
Yes.
regardless of your
Yes.
superlatives.
So I'm just going to say, in the book, there's this passage where I talk about who's my spiritual hero. It's Pinocchio. Pinocchio is my spiritual hero.
Okay.
If you've ever seen Pinocchio, you know how the story goes, right? He's this puppet, right, that is created. And what does he want more than anything else? To be a real boy.
Yep.
He wants to be real. And he goes out and he has all these crazy misadventures, right? And if you remember them from the movie, right, he goes to Stromboli's circus. He becomes, right, he tries everything. He goes out Pleasure Island. Oh my gosh, this is my story, okay? He goes to Pleasure Island. He goes on a circuit. He does all this crazy stuff. And every time he's screwing up his life, just screwing up his life, right? And then what happens? He has to go save Geppetto, his creator, right, who's been swallowed by a whale. But in the process, who has to die? Pinocchio.
Yeah.
So Pinocchio dies saving Geppetto, and that's when, I know this is crazy, everybody, but the blue fairy brings him back to life. And who died? That part of Pinocchio that needed to die in order to become real.
Yes.
And we need communities like 12-step communities and friendships where we can go on our crazy misadventures, make all kinds of mistakes. They welcome us back every time, and they help us to become real men and women. And if you don't have that in your life, you are indeed dangerously lonely. If you don't have a community where you can, because that's a cycle that everybody's on. Everybody's on the journey of trying to become a real man and a real woman. And we go looking for ways to do it of our own making that end up causing chaos and problems. But what has to die at the center of us is that self-centered, egotistical part of us that needs to die so that the real us can come out. And that happens in community.
And I want to move on from this, but I think that makes us really attractive to where we are attracting people naturally. And then another kind of inoculating yourself from loneliness by being that way.
Yeah, but it takes a minute.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is but
I will say this, suffering will accelerate it for you. Like if you have an experience where you really get to the place of I'm out of ammo.
Yeah.
And it may be a relationship ends that is heartbreaking or whatever. Like here's a crazy thing. And part of my journey in this book is I really want to normalize conversations around just brokenness and about addiction and about the things that we face, right? And mistakes that we make. Like, can we just normalize them in the spaces that we're in, right? And not put on the game face every day and pretend that they're not happening, right? I see addictions, the mistakes that we make and broken relationships as invitations from God to a depth of intimacy with him that we did not previously know existed. And if we're willing to accept that invitation and do anything it takes to arrive at a place where we give God consent to change us, then all of these things become graces. All of these things become the greatest gifts we've ever been given. I see my problem with addiction, that it goes back to 1987, as maybe the greatest gift God ever gave me. Now that may sound crazy, but but if you think about it, that is also the calculus of the gospel.
Yeah.
Do you know what someone said in a meeting the other day? Another great thing says, I don't know. And this is a guy that's like, this guy's in bad shape. Like this, like there's everything in there from like very, very successful people to crazy unsuccessful people and everybody in between, right? This guy goes, this really broken guy in this meeting says, I don't know, y'all. And he goes, I think God likes fixing broken things.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's wisdom, man.
That's a sermon.
God likes fixing broken things.
Yeah.
Right? So I see these things, and I try to help my clients see these things, and my children to see these things, that these are invitations, they're summonses from God to a new place of relationship with him. That when you walk through those fires, and the 12 steps help you do it, right? You will look back and you will say, it was the greatest gift I was ever given. And I see that now.
I think that's touching a lot of people right now. That it's okay to go, hey, I need to look at this as a gift. Really interesting, fascinating stuff. I want to move to something I've been fascinated by, and that is watching young couples. As Stacy and I have had opportunities to, invite young couples into our home through our Bible study and mentor some couples, and then watching our relationship move through the different seasons. She has her master's degree, very accomplished. I have no degree. I'm not accomplished. But I'm fascinated as I've also coached a lot of professionals that are married and they're both professionals. So at this season of life, whether they got kids or not, they both have professional dreams, ambitions, if we could call it that, and they're getting after it. But they're married. And that's a really interesting dynamic there, especially and I've taken calls from men and women who are wrestling with a promotion that would move them away and thus create tumult, for lack of a better word, or some type of a what about my spouse who's thriving and crushing it? I've just encountered that a lot and coached through a lot of that. I just really wanted you to address that. Any tips or maybe you want to focus on traps for that professional couple who they both got their individual ambitions and yet they really do want their marriage to work and there's some natural conflict there. How do we support each other? How do we sacrifice for each other?
One of the things that I often will say to a couple is, who is most going to be affected as a result of this decision, right? That has to be brought into the equation. right? Oftentimes we haven't even discussed about, well, how old are the kids and what age are they? Are they in school? Are they this? You know, I mean, there's so many things, so many moving pieces when you have to make these decisions, right? But I guess the ultimate question one has to ask in these situations is, first of all, what is best for the relationship for the long term, right? And who most has to die in this equation of the two of us in order for the right decision to be made? Do you know? Does that make sense? Like,
It's consistent. That's what I have said in many of these cases. What's the shared vision? In other words, for the moment, let's get out of our individual goals and ambitions and go as a couple. Where do we see ourselves in 30 years? And let's look at that big picture.
Yes.
And then to your point, I think you said it really well. I'm going to make the short-term decision right now based on that long-term goal.
So let me give you a good question for that, right? One that I've used with clients. Clients come to me all the time. And they go, "I'm having this problem, blah blah blah. And I got to make this decision, da da da, bing bing bing." And the question I always ask is, "Okay, how do you want this story to end?"
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing you're saying. I just say to people all the time, "How do you want this story to end?" Well, I want, our kids to be this way, and I want, to be, okay, you can't necessarily have both. How do you want this story to end? And then reverse engineer back from that.
That's right.
Which is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's
I love saying it in the context, though, of a narrative to somebody. Like, all right, so, and by the way, sometimes the question is, all right, you are in a lose-lose situation here. Which lose do you want? You know what I mean?
That's a great way of putting it.
Because sometimes that's what we're faced with.
That's right. Because sometimes it's a temporary loss, but it doesn't mean you're not winning long term.
Yeah.
I love it. On relationships in the workplace, boy, oh boy, this is such a huge issue. And I really can't wait for your take on this. Your thoughts to somebody who would call in or they would see you and go, "Ian, my manager is such a fill in the blank. It ain't pretty. They're a jerk." This is the dealing with difficult people in the workplace. Some people we see more and more now in stories and in the data out there, they tend to just throw their hands in the air and they quit and move on from what is a really good gig for them. It's the right step. It's the right step on the ladder, if you will. But they allow, and understandably so, difficult people, whether that be a manager or a coworker, it is such a grating experience. And I've said this before many times, you can be in a dream job and the people around you can make it a nightmare to where it is no longer a dream job. So I don't discount that at all. So coming to you as kind of that therapist, what would you say to somebody who goes, I'm in this weird conundrum. I'm in a great role as far as where I want to be. It's paying me well, but I have what feels on some days almost an impossible personal situation.
I wonder sometimes when we find ourselves in these situations, if it's a good thing to step back and ask ourselves, again, and I always speak through a spiritual lens, and however people want to, I don't want to get too specific about that, except to say that I'm always like, all right, so at this moment, why do you think you have been presented with this problem at this particular moment in your life? Like, I'm always trying to pull, because we're so, when we have a problem, we go like this.
Right.
And I'm always trying to get people to back up off, and look with a to open the aperture and look at the whole field, right? That's before them, the visual field before them. Recently, I had a guy who had just an allergy to someone they were working with. Just an allergy.
It's a great way of saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the two of them together, and I'm like, well, oftentimes when we have these reactions to other people, it's because we are recognizing that they are revealing to us wounds in ourselves that need healing. And that I said, so I'm always telling people, like, sometimes the person you hate the most is actually your best teacher. They're revealing things to you about you.
And so you take it out on them almost. You resent them?
But what I'm saying is, like, if you, for example, you have certain behaviors or ways of being in the world that upset me, right? It's oftentimes what's going on there, and this is just Jungian psychology in a little bit, right? Like there is something in my shadow that you are revealing to me in your behavior that I need to look at.
Yes.
So therefore, you become a teacher to me.
Right.
Even though you're a pain in my neck, you are revealing something to me about me that I need to take a look at.
And so it's and we are unaware of that in the
Yeah,
moment. It's like we're irritated at their behavior.
Yes.
But we is it almost like we don't even realize that, oh, I do that,
So
and
it's
I'm
so
irritated at
interesting.
me?
Like in the 12-step literature, right? Like what Bill Wilson wrote. He says, whenever you are bothered by somebody, right, or by something, it is 100% on you. I know that sounds crazy.
People's heads are exploding everywhere right
no,
there.
but I know that's crazy because you're all saying that's unfair, and everything in us is going, that's not right, right? It's like, okay, but hear what he's saying, right? If you can't own your part in what is going wrong in the thing, then you have no power and you are a complete victim of that other person's behavior. If you have to be able to look at what's going on and even own 1 or 2% of what is going wrong in this relationship before you have any hope of it moving forward. Like, wow, what am I being invited to look at in me? How is this behavior that this person, this person reminds me of my mother. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, you need to step back and reflect, like, what is going on here?
Wow.
And how is this an invitation to a new level of self-awareness for me? Now, look, there are crazy people in the workplace. There are people in the workplace who are sociopathic, and those people are so toxic, you just have to get away from them. They may be mentally ill, right? But there is always in my mind, as a spiritual director and as a therapist, I'm always trying to find this angle of like, all right, well, what's God up to here in this relationship between you and this person? And what is the invitation that God is extending to you through the discomfort you are experiencing in this relationship for you to become someone better than who you currently are?
That's good. That's really good.
Right?
That's a lot for people to process, but what it does is I'm sitting there and I'm personalizing what you're saying. And I'm going, if I'm doing what you suggested there.
Yes.
Now I have the opportunity to manage my emotions in a much healthier way.
Yeah.
And be that bigger person. Be bigger,
Yes.
And I don't mean like in a puffed up, I'm talking like the ability to just handle it.
And what's so funny?
Deal with difficult people.
Listen, look, dealing with difficult people. I've been a difficult person, right?
Oh,
You've
of course,
been a difficult person.
Yeah.
So one of the things we have a book called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is kind of like unpacks the 12 steps, right? And actually what my book does is take a lot of that and makes it available to everybody, right? There's a thing in it called the sick man's prayer, which is like, when you meet somebody, just remember that they are as spiritually sick as you are. They are as spiritually sick as you are. And to extend love and tolerance and mercy and compassion toward them in the same way that you would to a sick friend. That's how, and the kind of character that the 12 steps brings up in us is a person able to deal in those difficult relationships, right? Like, you may discover in the context of a difficult relationship, what am I being invited to here? How about honesty? And you're so afraid of conflict that you have avoided having words with this person.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So now what is being asked of you here, like to say, God, what in this relationship with Bob or Jane, what is the invitation that you are extending to me that is calling me to a new level of growth? And can you please give me the strength and the clarity and the discernment and the ability to receive that invitation and act on it, right? Like, people don't often do that. They're looking for fast hacks to problems,
That's true.
And it's like, in the spiritual life and just in life in general, I'm sorry, there are no hacks in the spiritual life. They don't exist. You can maybe find hacks for other stuff in your business, your life, and stuff like that, but I'm just telling you, man, in the spiritual life, no hacks.
Yeah,
it's just, it's just the work.
All right, let's go to a question back here.
Hi. So I spent the first part of my career in the church world. And so it really resonated with me when you said, if only the church could see what's happening in the basement. I'm now leading people in corporate America, so outside of the church. And I'm wondering, what can I do as a leader to cultivate 12 steps, those types of conversations on my team.
That's really good.
I think the thing I'm always telling people is do your own work first. Like, in other words, like we often get an idea.
You're talking about the leader.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, I've done so much Enneagram work with companies, right? And I love it. I love coming in. I love doing day-long workshops. I love training people on it. I've seen it save people's jobs. I've seen it save marriages. I've seen it turn teams around. I mean, I love teaching the Enneagram, right? But there's always an aggressive type, usually a 3, 7, or an 8, and they want to go like this. They go, okay, well, I want to learn the Enneagram so I can fix so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so, right? And it's like, I'm like, I think I may see the problem with the team.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like you are not doing the first thing, which is working on you. You have to do the work first. And that's why, you know, when I wrote the book, here's what the heart of the book was, right? My life has been changed by working the 12 steps dramatically. God has used it, and it feathers beautifully with my own faith tradition, so that's not a problem. There's no inconsistencies there. It's just been a great tool through which God, a tool of, you know, sort of a channel of grace through which I have experienced great healing and personal transformation. So what I wanted to do was democratize the steps. How do I tell people, guess what? Anybody could benefit from this. You don't have to get a DUI or go to treatment in order to benefit from doing these things, right? So what I would say to that question is, do the work first, and then you'll know.
So let's get practical. We won't in any way pry or embarrass our friend here. But let's use your subtitle. This is for the well-adjusted.
Yep.
So let's take a well-adjusted person, not dealing
They don't
with,
exist, but continue.
Well, it's in your subtitle.
I know, but it should have been in quotes.
I know, and that's the irony. So let's take somebody that's on the mild side of addiction, using the beginning of our conversation.
Okay.
So no train wreck right now, no crisis. And to her question,
Yeah.
and she's leading people. How does she practically, as she began to walk through 1 through 3, you laid it out for us, it's God first, then ourself, others. What does that leader do practically as approaching the 12 steps? And I know you don't have time to unpack each step. Well, how would they approach the 12 steps to go, I'm going to work on me using these 12 steps to then allow me to be a better leader for the people that I'm entrusted?
So the steps are not a technique that's going to give you like new leadership skills and insights,
That's correct.
right? That's not what they're for.
No.
They're designed to facilitate a spiritual awakening that will utterly change your character.
Transformation.
That changes your character.
Yeah.
Out of which is the headwaters of your leadership.
Right. So better person,
better leader.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
More whole person, more whole leader, right? And it will, again, we're always looking for,
Yeah. This thing I got to do on a Tuesday.
Yeah, like we okay, well, what's the practical application here? It's like, well, that's just not how this life works. Like, we have to experience a transformed character. We have to experience, and once that happens, many of the things that we're looking for answers for, the answers just happen organically. Like, if you become a more loving, tolerant, kind, patient person, you will become that leader, right? And you will have the wisdom and the tools to make the decisions that you need to make, and the things that you need to do as a leader will just naturally flow out of that transformed heart.
Yeah. I love that we keep coming back to transformation, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about is one of the hot phrases now is manifesting. So according to Psychology Today, we'll use them as the source here. Manifesting is the idea that through the power of belief, we can effectively think a goal into becoming reality. Now, I'm glad you're laughing, because I'm literally
sorry,
think
but there's part of me that looks at that and goes
it's
like,
a hoax. That's now, I'll go out there. I think it's a hoax because I think it's just buffoonery.
Yeah, that just sounds like some sort of like
And it's
TikTok
become
psychosis to me. I don't
is.
know, like
But I mean-
like some preternaturally attractive person with a wide brimmed hat is selling that out there.
And they
it's
are.
like
It's celebrities. That's where it's
Okay,
blowing up on
you know.
TikTok and Instagram. And it's become a thing. And I bring it up because
Yeah.
I see well-meaning people.
yeah. It's not my thing. I'm not here to judge anybody else's thing, right? But I just
based
think
on
there's
that
a little
definition, let's take on the definition.
But let's actually, though, acknowledge one upside to it, right? Which is that there are certain mindsets or ways of thinking that create a climate in which positive change can happen, right? So, I don't believe it. That sounds like magical thinking to me. And so that's
there's
why I'm a little bit
that
like,
and positive thinking.
yeah, I mean, I just love it like, well, that's
This is the idea that
over-promising
I'm
something
gonna-
there that I think is a little bit over.
It's almost like a prediction based on I'm thinking it, therefore it is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. That just sounds like magical stuff to me. So, but all to say though, I do think that cultivating a heart that is filled with hope and with dreams and with desires, which is a good thing. Desires are good.
Yep.
Right. And having and we know this from psychology, right? That an optimistic or positive mindset is a good predictor of success.
No question.
Right. So I think all that's great. But the manifesting piece of it, I mean, look, there's so much snake oil out there. There is so much snake oil that people are selling all the time. Here's happiness. Here's where you're going to find happiness. Here's where you're going to find this. Here's where you're going to find that. Right. And I'm always like, I mean, maybe because I'm from New York, part of me is always like, what are you selling me, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a little bit of a skeptic at this stuff, right? Here, all I know is when I speak from my own experience, strength, and hope, right, is, it just sounds like another goofy hack.
Yeah.
Like, just think positively. And, if you just think like you're rich, then you're going to be rich.
Yeah.
And then I'm always like, well, what makes you think rich was a good goal?
Right. Yeah. It just speaks to what you've been saying, that there's no hack. And this idea that if I just say it, it's going to happen, and then there's no work, there's no hard work here. We've really been talking about it. Even the essence of the 12 steps. I mean, this is work. Life is hard. We've talked about that. This idea, and I think it leads to a lot of people having an excuse for not doing
I'm just
what
gonna
they
think about
need
it.
to do.
Well, I mean, look, I am a guy who is always going back and reading. There's a great line that someone said, let history be your editor. So like when you're picking books, read old books because history has edited out all the dumb ones.
So true.
Right? Just so let history be your editor. So when I'm reading, I read the great spiritual masters, I read the Stoics, I read all these different people, and I go mining for truths that have lasted thousands of years. I'm not really interested in things that have lasted 15 minutes. I'm much more interested in looking at ideas and principles that have worked for thousands of years. The 12 steps arise out of traditions that are thousands and thousands of years old. They are proved and true, right? Like, so, there's a part of me that goes looking for, indisputable, inarguable truths that historically have buoyed people and helped them become the best expression of themselves. Right. And then I just try to find modern language and ways of communicating them to other people that make it accessible to them. Right. Because some of the original sources are difficult.
Yeah.
Right. So whether that's the Enneagram or it's the 12 steps, and years ago I wrote a book about St. Francis, you know what I mean? Like these are like just looking for the stuff and then trying to communicate them in modern terms to help people access what has always been there right in front of them.
Speaking of right in front of us, there's been so much that has been right in front of us today. It's why we named this show Front Row Seat. And as I started the show today, I said that this is a conversation that is designed for all of us to get better and to challenge you. I'm just going to leave us with something that I've learned and something that I'm going to do. If you take something from this, great, but think about this conversation. And here's one thing I'm going to take away, that you said the game is progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did that hit me like a ton of bricks. So I need to be reminded of this on a daily basis. And over the next few days, I'm going to take some time with the pencil and my moleskin and write down areas where I want progress and what does realistic progress look like. And not try to be ideal or play the perfection game, but play the progress game. I challenge you to do something similar like that in your life, and I think we'll all be better for it. Hey, if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to join us in studio sometime for this live recording, check out the link in the show notes for up-to-date info on our guests, dates, and opportunities. Well, Ian, I got to tell you, I'm blessed to get to be your friend. We don't get to be together as much as I'd like, but I am going to be with you soon at a 12-step meeting.
Yep.
I can't wait for that experience and share about that and how that helps transform me. So I want to say thanks for being with us, and I know I'm better for it. And to our friends here, would you help me in thanking Ian Cron? Thank you, buddy.